Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to Persuading the Invisible, the microbial key to optimal dental health. Presenting is Dr. Emily Stein, the co-founder and CEO of Primal Health.
Thank you. First off, how many of you are dentists and hygienists in public health? Okay, good. Well, this is me. I'm Emily Stein. My background is in microbiology and in immunology with an emphasis in rheumatology. So I was actually at Stanford as a postdoc when my bestie had a stroke, and it turned out that her tooth was extracted the day before. And now we know from Medicaid and Medicare claim analysis, I'm talking like over 70,000 claims, that there's a 50% increased risk of a heart attack or a stroke if you pull someone's tooth or if they get a dental implant. And that risk lasts for weeks. It doesn't normalize back to baseline for 6 months after the procedure. That's because if there are scary microbes in the mouth, they escape through the bloodstream and can cause a clot, which is what happened to my grandmother. And the trajectory of her life and the expense of her life was significantly altered due to just a minor surgery. And so what we now know is that there's an extensive relationship between oral microbes and systemic disease. So if someone has gum disease, or a lot of what's called the red complex, which are organisms that are anaerobes that fester below the gum line, they're very pro-inflammatory. They don't just stay in the mouth, and they escape. They intentionally wound the tissue to gain access to the bloodstream. They eat heme, they need heme to survive, and they go places. So if someone has periodontal disease, the top 3 systemic diseases are heart disease, diabetes, and reproductive issues, premature birth. So about the oral microbiome, the majority of microbes in the mouth are healthy, health-promoting microbes. Okay, it's the oral microbiome comprises protists, viruses, fungi, and bacteria. It's the second most bioavailable, biodiverse compartment aside from the colon. The dogma that we're all taught is that there are about 700 species of microbes in the mouth. What we saw in collaboration with Dental Foundation of Minnesota, where we queried 595 people in the Twin Cities area between 18 and 80 years old, we found that there's actually almost double the number of species than what's reported in the literature. And we also found that there's over 1,500 metabolites that they're making in people's mouths. A third of them we've never seen before. Pretty interesting. Also, what we know about the oral microbiome is that just like the gut microbiome, there's a relationship between certain microbes and autism, certain microbes and Alzheimer's, certain microbes in ADHD, depression. Microbes in the mouth make neurotransmitters. I don't know if you knew that. We absorb them sublingually. It's also involved in fertility issues or premature birth. It's also involved when you see differences in microbes in the mouth with various different autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, MS. We're looking at it for Parkinson's currently. And then there's what we're seeing is people across the country that get diagnosed with SIBO have very distinct, unique signatures of microbes in the mouth. And we're working with a Baylor University right now in collaboration because we know some of the microbes in the mouth are strongly linked to head and neck cancer, pancreatic cancer, and colon cancer. Some of the culprits that cause gum disease are actually they think a big driver of pancreatic cancer. So, you guys are in the trenches every day dealing with what may be lurking in people's mouths. And just know that the mouth is I view it as an environment that has ecological niches all over the place. So the microbes on, let's say, a bicuspid is completely different than the composition of a third molar, or the tongue, or below the gum line, or in the jawbone. Most people don't think that bone marrow microbes are living in it. They are. Microbes are inside teeth. And recognize that there's a different community across the different surfaces. And normally in a healthy mouth, you get normal deposition of an ecosystem where there's checks and balances, where each microbe is holding others in check. And what happens, what we see in disease, is you get what's called dysbiosis, which means that balance is lost. Some microbes are overtaking the ecosystem and really driving it hard, so you're losing those checks and balances. Hence cavities, hence gum disease. So, what are some of the drivers of dysbiosis? Believe it or not, you inherit not just the genetics from your parents, but you also inherit your mom's oral microbiome. So it's inherited. So if she lost her teeth, let's say by the age of 25, odds are you're going to be struggling because you inherited that microbiome. Also, folks who've been exposed to a lot of antibiotics completely shifts the composition of the microbiome and towards actually more dysbiotic conditions. If people are taking hygiene products that have a lot of antiseptics daily, they're going to shift that microbiome towards microbes that are resistant to the antiseptics. Also, people were stressed, right? So stress actually feeds certain microbes, like Candida. Candida loves to eat stress hormones. Also, hormone flux. Women tend to have a lot more Candida and Aspergillus in their mouths than men. We also have higher acid content in our mouth too, which facilitates the growth of certain acid-resistant microbes as well. And you'll normally see a dysbiosis occurring in adolescence, through puberty, and then also through perimenopause activity because the microbes change based on their environment. And then also change the environment. So, if you move, your microbiome shifts. So you'll start to see people that are healthy, right? They live in another country, they have no dental problems, they come to the United States, they start eating and adapting to our environment here. You'll start to see signs of disease. Preceding that, changes in the oral microbiome and gut microbiome occur first. So we think it's causal. And then diet. And diet is a big, big, big component that drives the oral microbiome. And it also can drive dysbiosis. You guys know sugary drinks, energy drinks, candies, those kinds of things are really, really strong drivers of dysbiosis. But also processed foods. Anything that has preservatives in it, anything that has simpler carbohydrate content actually significantly changes who's living in the mouth and what they're doing. So you can wind up with a balanced ecosystem and diverse ecosystem and checks and balances where there's no signs of dental disease whatsoever. And then through continued exposure of diet, you start to really drop the pH of the mouth, becomes highly acidic. You get enrichment of candida and anaerobes that are strong drivers of inflammation. And you get a change in what's called biofilm. So it becomes less thin, becomes instead very chunky and thick and sticky. And that's due to the fact that these microbes are just churning out this polymer. I call it their house. They're making a house, but it's disease-causing house instead of a health-promoting house. So what we've been working on is to go after and find novel ways to control the oral microbiome through non-toxic approach that is steering what they're doing and not trying to kill them. And so we did a high throughput screen, thousands and thousands of tests, and with the criteria that they must reduce pathogen growth and they must preserve beneficial microbes in the mouth. Also, they must drop things that are known to cause dental problems such as acid production, and then also stimulate the production of beneficial, what are called effectors, that makes the good guys become better. And what we stumbled upon is a dual approach, naturally safe ingredients, a prebiotic and a postbiotic. So prebiotics feed good microbes, and postbiotics are made by microbes that act on other microbes to change their behavior. And we are using basically these two things simultaneously as a nutritional carrot and a nutritional stick. And by doing that, we're blocking carbohydrate uptake globally in the mouth, so you're able to digest sugars downstream in your gut, but we're blocking the microbes from being able to digest those sugars. So then you're not gonna make the acid. You're not gonna risk demineralization events. Putrescine, cadaverine, those are waste products of bacteria actually. And you're stopping that from happening on a better diet. We've done numerous clinicals, and what we see is this transition occurs quickly. When you start to change microbial diets, you get transition of the oral microbiome quickly, within 30 days. As early as 3 days, you're starting to see big shifts. So you can take a dog that had like 8% of the whole mouth compartment was porphyromonas, and you can shrink it to 0.1% in 30 days. And the beautiful thing, unlike antibiotics, which microbes design around so quickly now with resistance, we're not seeing resistance because we're feeding the microbes a different diet. There's no impetus for them to stress out and design around our approach. We're just feeding them differently. And we're growing microbes that are beneficial that were never in the dog's mouth before that should be, which is great. So how does this approach work then for humans? So we looked at what is currently available, non-toxic, naturally safe to give to older adult population with gingivitis. And we chose to compare this approach to sugar alcohols, which are, everybody uses xylitol as a preventative for caries. It turns out microbes have learned how to convert xylitol into acid. There's a consortia of at least 5 organisms now that work together to tear that molecule apart and make different acids from it. So in this study, which is funded by the National Institutes of Health, Institute on Aging, we enrolled 122 older adults that were minority population, Medicaid population, in Cleveland, Ohio. Did a bunch of questionnaires. Of those 122, 24 had enough teeth to score and had gingivitis of a mild to moderate grade. So they were randomized and either put into the sugar alcohol group or our treatment group. And for 6 weeks, we followed them. We took baseline levels for salivary testing and all the clinicals, and then at 6 weeks. Here's an example of a subgingival scraping from the different recipients. You can see one of the cohort members from the sugar alcohol recipient below the gum line. That biofilm is still chunky and thick. But on the keto diet approach, it's really thin, not sticky, not chunky. As far as gum disease associated pathogens, the red complex is the top row, and then orange and green. But there was an 89 to 91% reduction in 3 different red complex organisms in the keto diet versus the sugar alcohol diet. This work was done by World DNA Labs. And as far as clinical scores go, there was more of a plaque reduction in the keto group compared to the sugar alcohol group. The interesting part was that the sugar alcohol groups, we saw actually pocket depth change. So probe depths actually increased slightly in 6 weeks compared to the keto diet. And then bleeding on probing, there was 100% reduction in all bleed sites on the keto treatment versus the sugar alcohol. So aside from what we're doing, there are other things that can be done to really impact dysbiosis that you could easily deploy. So you can advise patients on diet. Obviously, limiting simple carbohydrate is really key for dental hygiene. And all these alternative, like chickpea and all that, something else to be very wary about and mindful of. So those definitely grow and enrich certain kinds of karyogenic streps, staph. You see red complex going up and candida. Suggest more fermented foods. We're not eating as many fermented foods. We know fermented foods contain postbiotics that grow and enrich and help rediversify the mouth. Also, drinking filtered water. When we're finding that these microbes are in our water supply, they don't get killed by the normal treatment. Okay, so we're drinking Purphyromonas, we're drinking Candida and Aspergillus and water molds and amoebas. And so you can have your patients that are really high risk, just filter their water. Also, hygiene practices. As a microbiologist, I feel strongly, and we see this reflected in all of our in vitro data and isolates we've garnered in our repository from horses, dogs, cats, people, is the more antiseptics and preservatives in the diet, the more enriched for multi-drug resistant microbes and pathogens. So avoiding daily use of antiseptics is a really important thing. Also teaching preventative actions like don't share your utensils. These are communicable diseases. These microbes spread. And if someone in the household has dental disease, like a dog, or you're dating someone new and they have signs of dental disease, odds are there's going to be a major transference of microbes. We're seeing shared microbes bouncing throughout the household between the animals and the humans. So it's really important just to teach mindfulness about behaviors. People touch themselves all the time and spread microbes. And then also show patients what gingival inflammation looks like. We're only teaching people about plaque, right, and tartar. We're not really teaching people about what upset gums look like or inflamed gums look like. And also, there are great tools coming out in the market, which is our salivary tests, whether they're next-gen sequencing based or PCR based or easier chairside based. But they're great ways to help educate patients and get that buy-in so that patients can see, hey, I'm doing much better, aren't I, doc? Because their test scores get better. And then some clinicians have actually started to use phase contrast microscopes in their office, where they do a wet mount right there and show patients what's swimming around in their mouths. And that also helps with compliance and creates an awareness. Okay, I'm doing better. I have less squiggly little, swimmers. And then there are probiotics on the market as well. In our studies, we find that in diseased mouths, probiotics don't do well. They don't really do anything because they're such a hostile environment. They're not going to grow and they're not going to be active. So they're really good for maintaining in a healthy mouth as opposed to a diseased state. And then there's prebiotics, which I'm a big proponent of, not just our approach, but there's plenty of prebiotics coming out on the market. Be aware though that some of them that are using soluble fibers can get turned into acid by oral microbes. They'll ferment it and turn it into butyrate, propionate, things that smell bad. So be wary about what they call prebiotics. Read the ingredients before you give them to a patient. Other things you can think about, it's a two-pronged approach. I'm talking mostly about the oral microbiome, but you can also use immune boosting products too that help really curate the immune response. Because in a dysbiotic mouth, there's an overgrowth of harmful microbes which causes inflammation. And by helping to treat and support that immune system through vitamins and CoQ10, which is like a sequester of inflammatory mediators, you can actually start to get to a two-pronged approach by treating the microbes and the immune system itself. And then there's newer things that are being worked on in academics and early stage companies, where they're looking at transferring oral microbiota from a healthy individual into a diseased individual, and then also live microbial therapies, which are live microbes that are delivering some kind of targeted approach to knock out certain types of pathogens. So those are on the horizon, just so you know. So in summary, basically the oral microbiome is a significant driver of oral disease and systemic disease. And there are emerging methods you guys can use that can provide clinical benefit. And then there's also lifestyle things that you could advise your patients on as well to improve daily hygiene practices, and supplemental products that they can take at the home, on the home level, because it is a day-to-day thing. And one treatment every 6 months is helpful, but it's a day-to-day struggle to maintain a healthy microbiome. And with that, happy to take questions. Yes.
So when you were comparing the keto diet, you mentioned first the xylitol. Is there a certain product, or I don't know if I missed it, or is it just a certain diet that the patient should be eating?
Yeah, no, we have products on the market. But this is an educational talk, so but what we do see, there's a cancer cluster. We're doing a clinical study in Northwest Iowa right now with a cancer cluster, and we're seeing that there's one family member that is actually on a keto diet. She lost 20 pounds on her keto diet for a year. She went on to our lozenges delivering the microbes. That keto diet, she lost 50 additional pounds in 6 months. So it's a real thing. Just because you're on a diet doesn't mean your microbes are.
I know it's educational. Are you able to say the name of the product?
Yeah. So our product is called Daily Dental Care. Persuading is the one for more enamel care, and then Protectin is the one that's the supercharged below the gum line diet.
Can you repeat that, please? Both of them?
Sure.
Can you repeat those?
Sure. Persuading, Phossident. We named that because of the microbial acid block that occurs, and then Protectin, Proteatin, and that is the supercharged below the gum line nitric oxide generator.
Marketing over here, if you want a sample.
Since
you can't say it, I can.
My co-founder back there. Yeah.
What is your take on iodine?
Iodine. I love iodine, but deploy it carefully. Keep it far, far away from the mucosa. Most microbes can handle a lot of iodine. Some microbes can't, and so it just depends on the microbe.
So the COVID one, I know I've heard some talk somewhere, and how that compares. Can you speak more about signal from the microbes? Because they say paint it everywhere.
No, don't paint it everywhere. Well, it's strips. It's a stripping agent, so that's why we use it before surgery, right? But what we know is if you completely get rid of a microbiome, inflammation just goes up and up and up because those microbes actually have a immune or inflammation modulating capability. So they're actually dampening down the immune response. And if you strip microbes away from that were good and beneficial, you're gonna wind up opening up opportunities for attachment of, let's say, staph and strep and more microbes that maybe you don't like. Fecal, you see a lot of fecal microbes in people's mouths, it's gross, but you're just enriching for that. Because that space will get occupied within 2 minutes after you paint it on. So when we brush, we're just smearing microbes around and they reattach in 2 minutes. and we're changing what they're doing. Any other questions? Yeah.
How did the two products that you talked about work with immunocompromised individuals?
Yeah, great with immunocompromised. They're just naturally safe ingredients because I built it for my grandmother who had rheumatoid arthritis, and she was on Coumadin, so nothing could interfere with her meds. So we started very gently. We've done clinicals in memory care as well.
What about whitening agents? Are people using
Oh my
whitening?
gosh, whitening agents kill good bacteria so easily. Yeah, oh, it's awful. They just kill the lactobacillus and lactococcus and bifido. Yeah,
How about baking soda?
I love baking soda.
What will that, okay.
I love it. What does happen if it's a lot of baking soda, strep will, they make something called glycocalyx, like a puffy coat, and they'll make it puffier to protect them from getting direct contact with the sodium bicarb. But we have sodium bicarb in our products.
Is it abrasive? Is it supposed to be?
Yeah, the
water?
abrasiveness, but just the now acidic environment.
Yeah, you just let it dissolve. Any other questions?
Have you done any research on, is there a connection between your gut microbiome and the mouth?
Totally.
What do you know, what can you tell us about that?
So every day, your average human swallows anywhere from 0.5 to 3 billion microbes a day, and they make it through the stomach acid fine. And then they wind up in the ileum, and then they start to influence downstream. So there is a direct connection. We've got a lot of patients. There's actually a dentist we're working with who has SIBO at UCLA, and she is miserable. By the end of her day, she's gained 3 sizes, and it's just gas buildup because she's colonized by a lot of microbes that make methane and hydrogen gas. And by changing that, that's one example. Changing the diet, she's no longer pain, and it does shift the microbe. Women, fertility issues and GI issues by changing the oral microbiome. We just got a couple pregnant the other day. But we had to treat the husband and the wife and the dog because they all share those microbes around. Just as an example. Yeah.
So this feels like it's kind of going off in a different way, so just tell me if that's not the case. But I'm just wondering about allergies,
Yes.
gluten issues.
Yes. We just finished a clinical study at the zoo in St. Paul with orangutans, gorillas, and snow leopards that had gingivitis or stomatitis and resorptive lesions and IBD. And what we found was treating the oral microbiome by that keto, their anti-gluten secretory IgAs went way down. And their zonulin and their immune markers that are like the last pancreatic elastase, so digestive health markers and tight junction, so getting rid of leaky gut, those markers all went back to more baseline levels, in addition to having better gingival health.
On one of the first slides, I've never heard a potential connection with autism. Is it, are you finding, is it the behavior is modified, or what is exactly the connection?
Oh, long story short, about 30 years of research suggests that gut microbiome makes certain products that are strongly linked to autism. And now we're finding microbes in the mouth are doing the same thing. So tryptophan-based byproducts and GABA. Microbes make GABA in the mouth? Yeah, it's pretty cool. So if you are eradicating it with, let's say, heavy-duty, non-specific chemicals, you could be jeopardizing the patient's longer-term mental, because sublingual absorption is still the fastest known absorption, and they're constantly secreting things even while we're sleeping. They're still active.
You're clearly very passionate about this topic and you're very knowledgeable, so thank you for all of that.
Yeah.
It's really amazing information.
we're still learning. I mean, it's a huge frontier opportunity. Yeah.
Some pulse teeth on elderly people, is that another option?
Mhm.
Grade 6 to 6 like that. Is there any research into, you know, what some probiotic ahead of time
Yeah.
can do, or like there are things to, you know, mitigate risk?
Yeah.
Obviously, if they're in pain, you got, you know, you might,
Yeah.
but it's just, you done any research with that at all?
Yeah. So what do you do prophylactically before you pull a tooth? I wish my grandma, actually I would have had her on this product. I had to build it for her. She didn't lose any more teeth, luckily, after she started taking them, but you do need it, that cleanup phase for about 30 days before you pull a tooth. And then there are other, I mean, periodex, there's other, you know, those are very harsh and extreme, but it's case by case basis. But the beauty is that even if a patient has thrush or whatever, guess what the Achilles heel of Candida is? It's sugar. It's a sugar addict. So by cutting off its sugar supply, it literally will get outcompeted quickly.
Got some patience in mind, so.
Okay, there you go. Yes.
So I was just wondering if a person can, you know, for example, take these products and then bring their mouth into balance and then, you know, try to do better, you know, eat well or whatever it is. And then you don't have to do that anymore. Is this a progression that can happen like that?
Yeah, but they
Yeah.
must filter their water, and they have to use, they can't use like a Brita filter, which charcoal doesn't do anything. They have to use that zero filter, to really truly filter out these microbes that are in our water supply. Because it's percent and recolonizing.
Like a reverse, yeah, I was just
Yeah.
reverse osmosis.
Reverse osmosis is great. Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would love it if folks wouldn't have to be on products like ours for the rest of their life. But I don't know a better way. I'm not gonna go into the water treatment business to correct that problem. That's a whole, you know. But yeah, we're drinking them and it's in some of the foods. They test positive for bread complex, just so you know. Okay, well, thank you guys, appreciate it.